mixing the two together. When I function with an object, the object does something to me. I have to have it, okay? And I go for it. I don't analyze it. I don't say, oh, it's because the eye is here and the mouth is there and the angle or the color, whatever. I don't look for that. I just look for a instinctive reaction, which is mine. If the object pleases me, if the provenance is correct, if it's not stolen, etc., if the price is right and I can have the money, then I want to buy it, because I am a collector on one hand, although at the same time I deal and I buy exclusively pieces that I like. One of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life was buying things with the client in mind. And every time I've done that, I got stuck with the piece because the client in between changed his mind, or he didn't like my way of looking at the object. So I only buy what I like. That way, if it doesn't sell, if it doesn't find another person, and I get stuck with it, I enjoy it. So I have pieces for 20, 30, 40 years. They never sold. That's fine. I bought them with love, with affection, with interest, with emotion, and they're mine. And that's it. Now, on the other hand, once I have something, it becomes extremely important to me to try and figure out what it's for, how it functions, why did they make it, where does it come from, who owned it previously, why was it collected, why did somebody go to that culture and ask for that piece? Sometimes it's an accident, sometimes it was on purpose. And I try and reconnect the history of the object with the object. History has all sorts of different facets to it, and sometimes the history of an object is ever completed, maybe something like 20 years later. You never know. Somebody asked me the other day, why don't I continue with the provenance once I've sold a piece? Do I continue with the provenance? Do I keep looking? And I said, yes, and you should know that, because in your institution, I have been consistently sending information on one of the pieces that you purchased, because every time I see another one or find a bit of information, I keep adding information to what I've already given you. And this is super important for me. There are other people in the market who are only interested in the aesthetics. There are other people who are only interested in the academia. And fine, everybody has their own approach, and I'm not worried about it. My feeling is that the more you know about something, the more you show it, and the more you share the information and the feelings that you have about the object or how you are interacting with the object, the more you give this to the others, the more people will react favorably to these things. And so I'm very much like a missionary. I've spent the last 45 years missionarizing, trying to evangelize people not by giving them a Bible or a Torah or the Quran, but by showing them pieces and telling them that, look at it. If you react, fine. If you don't react, that's okay too. But just look at it. Open your mind, open your eyes, and at one point something is in principle going to happen. And that is how we share, and that is how we develop the interest in these pieces. The more you see them, the more people that see them, the more importance they have, and the more appreciation they will generate. And that is why museums are important, but not only. Private collectors are important, because they are the motor of the art market with the dealers. You can't have one without the other. So you have a triumvirate. You have the collector, the dealer, and the institution. And so you have, yes, it's mercantile, but yes, it's academic. And yes, it's aesthetic. So all three of these aspects come together. And we just have to keep on showing the pieces, publishing books about it, making films, as we're doing here, doing exhibitions, creating foundations, and pushing the envelope as far as we can. And that is, I guess, the final word. Collectors can support the academic side of things. They can support the return of information and objects. They can support the resurgence or revival or search for roots from the source cultures simply by being open-minded and simply by making available the things that they own, the information that they have, in whatever manner they care. There's no set idea of we have to do it this way, it has to be done that way. But the collectors are a universal sponge. They absorb and create fantastic amount of information, senses of aesthetics. They are thinking all the time about the objects and about where they come from. And I give you an interesting situation. In the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, basically the dealers, and of course academia, knew much more than the collectors about the art. And then came along the 80s. I'm speaking about like African and Oceanic and pre-Columbian art. And then came along the 80s, and something happened which is called desktop publishing, okay? And nobody really gives much credit to desktop publishing, but desktop publishing changed the face of the art world in relation to the dissemination of knowledge, the availability of imagery and ideas. And how it did that is by facilitating printing, publishing, and editing. And now all of a sudden, with the advent of personal computers, the individual sitting in their office, home, on a rock, under a waterfall, I don't know, they can all of a sudden start to express themselves, collect their ideas, analyze them, organize them, and put them into a publishable context. And the result of this is that collectors all of a sudden began to not only acquire a vast quantity of information, but they began to spread this information. And they began to spread it amongst themselves and amongst the dealers. And they began to do something which has resulted in an incredible increase in knowledge. They began to publish. And today, when you take the bibliographies of tribal arts, you take African art books, Oceanic art books, pre-Columbian art books, I would say without any fear that at least 60, if not 80% of all publications on the market since the 80s are private individuals having produced fantastic monographic or general opuses on the art forms that they're interested in. And this is something that is absolutely unique. It never existed before. Prior to the 80s, books were written by academia and published by big companies. They were complicated to do. Today, whether it's paper publishing or digital publishing, anybody can say whatever they want. Of course, it's up to us to make sure that what we're reading sounds true. But and you have to wade through a bit of misinformation, which is involuntary or sometimes on purpose. But the real amazing, how shall I say, advance in the late 20th century was the creation of desktop publishing, which opened up this whole world of information being readily made available by the individual. And this is something that is unique and it's fantastic, and we're all profiting from it. I've published, I don't know, over 45 catalogs, maybe even 50 catalogs. I don't even count them anymore. And we can do them within a couple of hours on a computer. And I see my colleagues, my friends, that we're all writing. I spend hours every day writing descriptions, writing texts. I wasn't meant to be an author. I don't think of myself as an author. I'm not writing novels. I'm not writing philosophical things. I'm writing about art. And people want to read it. And people want to use that information. And that, I think, is the most remarkable change in the art world in general, because it also relates to paintings and antiquities and silver and jewelry and whatever you want. Most of the publications today are done by the private sector. And this is one of the most important aspects of returning information, sharing information with the source cultures, making it available. And it is of the utmost importance that this continue, and that the source cultures be able to access this information freely. And it's nice if they acknowledge it also, but that's up to them.